Tonight's share is sponsored by Trey Holdings and okay.
He doesn't want to say his name. So here.
Okay, today's share is sponsored by Trey Holdings and another unnamed sponsor. As a schus for shidduchim. Okay, now let's without further ado, let's talk about the topic. So the topic, I think we said, what did I say the title was exactly? I don't remember. But we said we're going to talk about if people killed in the Holocaust or people killed in terror attacks or the like are considered Kadoshim. Now, obviously, it's a bit of a triggering question, and it's a loaded question, and it needs to be dealt with delicately, which we'll try to do. We're going to try to do. But let's go through the a little bit. Now, I just want to start off with this, and I don't mean this disrespectfully at all. I mean this with totally respectfully. The term Kadosh, the title called Kadosh, is kind of a social construct. And I'll tell you what I mean. There isn't a chazal that says, Hey chidami Kadosh, X, Y, and Z, if so-and-so happens, right? There isn't a Gemara that says, after something happened, they called him Kadosh. There are psukim that refer to Klal Yisrael, Kadosh Baruch Hu as Kadosh. There are psukim that refer to Klal Yisrael as Kadoshim, Kadosh and Am Kadosh. So, right, so my point is just it's a bit of a social construct. It means it's a term that became to be used to describe someone who dies al Kiddush Hashem was called a Kadosh. Elisha was called a Kadosh in the Navi. Lasad Lave, Klal Yisrael is referred to as Kadosh. It's just a term in the psukim in different ways, but it's not like there's a set designated thing that makes someone a Kadosh. And all the chuvas, which are later chuvas, which are more recent chuvas, that try to figure out like why Kadosh, what does it mean, where does it start? They point their different Gemaras, there's a Gemara in Shabbos, a Gemara in Tamid. If we have some time, we'll try to get into some of them that try to bring different Makaris for Kadoshim. But the truth is that there is no Gemara that says it. It's a term that started during probably the Tkufas Rishonim in Ashkenaz, after the Tatnu, the Crusades, which we talked about several weeks ago. After those riots, we see it in Avarachim and Tefillah. They're called Kedoshim. That's what they're called. We see that that's a term that Ashkenazim use to describe people who kill like Kedoshim Shemayim. It's in the Rishonim, the Merach HaZerua, the Chumas HaDeshen, the Tashbitz Kata, and many of the Rishonim from that Tkufa called. So it's hard to say who the first one to set the title Kedoshim for these people are, but it's clear that about 1,000 years ago, or 800-900 years ago, it became the title that was used to describe someone who's killed like Kedoshim Shemayim. Now, what qualifies as killed like Kedoshim Shemayim is, I guess, where this $1 million question will lie. Who's called a Kaddish? Now, I want to start with two. I think a little bit mikatza lakatza, just to highlight what's going on over here. I want to start with two stories that are told over. One of them is relatively famous and maybe has a tiny asterisk if it's actually happened in this manner or not. But it's a very famous story. In the Hakdama to Kavit Shiurim Chelik Aleph, Abu Chanan Wasserman's son brings down a story that he heard from Ephraim Ashri, who was a survivor of the Holocaust, who wrote as follows. He says, Rabbi Chanan, as we know, Rabbi Chanan, just tell you a little bit about him. Rabbi Chanan was from the Gedolei Reshivas in Europe before the war. Rabbi Chanan he learned by Rav Chaim in Volozhin, Rav Chaim Soloveitchik. He then learned by the Chafetz Chaim for Kollel, and he became a primary Talmud of the Chafetz Chaim. He would go back every Elul for 40 days, from the beginning of Rosh Chodesh Elul and through the Yom Neiron to stay with the Chafetz Chaim. Rabbi Chanan was a person who didn't smile. His kemat, no one ever saw him smile. He was very, very serious, a very, very intense, serious person. He was tall and imposing. He was a very, very kavod roish, serious person. He came to America in 1938 to collect money for his yeshiva for Baranovich, which was more of a high school, by the way, than a Beis Medrash. Baranovich was like young boys, like 16, 17-year-old boys. There was actually a lot of Chassidim learned in Baranovich because Baranovich was a big Slonim town. So a lot of Slonim Chassidim learned there. It wasn't like Dafka, like the most Litvish yeshiva in the world, even though Rabbi Chanan was a classic, quintessential Litvish yeshiva, but he had some Chassidish Bachrim. But Rabbi Chanan came to America in 1938 to collect money for his yeshiva, and the storm clouds were already gathering, and people knew that it might not be safe to go back to Lita, to wherever the yeshiva was, to Baranovich, and they begged Rabbi Chanan to stay, and Rabbi Chanan refused. The captain goes down with the ship. He has to go back to his Talmidim, and Rabbi Chanan, to a certain degree, clearly, obviously, Monday morning quarterback is very easy. It's easy to say now that in 1938 it was super clear that what was going to happen, but obviously no one could actually chalom what was really going to happen. Even if you saw storm clouds gathering, to draw the conclusion, it's easy for us to judge it, in hindsight. But Rabbi Chanan went back, and in 1941, I believe, in July of 1941, somewhere around now, like this time of year, Rabbi Chanan was in I believe Kavna or another Litvish town, and he was brought out to a fort over there, which was the location, the 9th fort or the 7th fort, which was different Gersayas, which was a place of great killing. Now, Rabbi Chanan, when he walked out of the house where they were staying to be taken to be killed, He said like this, and I'm going to read it to you in Yiddish because I think it's, I'll do the best I can. It's actually like a real intense Yiddish. But he says as follows. This is a Ephraim Ashri recording. He says, Rabbi Chanan hat geret ruhig and gelassen. Rabbi Chanan spoke softly and calmly vitamid, the way he always spoke. I feel the stimme hat bei ihm nicht gebeiten. Even the tone of voice didn't change how he was talking. Of sein Panim is given dieselbe Ernstkeit vitamid. He had the same serious, intense expression as always. Hat afilu nicht, these words. He didn't even take on a particular tone. He just looked at his son Reb Naftali, who was there with him. Reb Chanan's son Naftali was one of the Alta Mirrors, a mirror Talmud who was home with his father, and he says, "I'm talking to you, and I'm talking to Gans Klal Yisrael." And he says, "In Himmel, mistama halt men uns von tzadikim." Probably in Shemayim they consider us tzadikim. He says, "Aber man will doch as mil zal mechape sein mit unsere Gufim for dem Gans Klal Yisrael." Because Hashem seems to want us to be mechaper with our bodies for all of Klal Yisrael. Darf man take tshuva ton jetzt. Gleich in art, die Zeit is kurz. We have a few minutes now. We have to tshuva right now. We're getting closer to the place we're going to be killed with all the Kadosh Slabat Kavna, and we're going to be karbanis for Klal Yisrael. We don't want to be pigel. And he says, maybe with our death we'll be able to save unsere Amerikaner Brüder. We'll be able to save the Yiddishkeit of our American brothers. Rabbi Chanan had just gotten back from America. It was very much on his mind. And he says, "Zol chalila nicht reinfallen bei Kana and Mayach apostle machshava." Nobody should chas v'shalom in his head, in his mind, think something apostle machshava, was is pigel and macht pasel dem carbon. If you think the wrong thoughts now as you're being taken out to be killed, that's pigel. It ruins the carbon. Mezayin nitz dem mekayim the greste mitzvah be'eshi tzata be'eshat asel levneisa. Das Feuer wird brennen unsere Gufim und das Feuer wird zurück aufmachen das jüdische Volk. This fire will consume our bodies, but it will give life to Klal Yisrael to have another round. Now, so this is kilu the height, like the pristine height of a Jew being Meiser Nefesh HaKiddushim Shemayim, meaning a Jew with total clarity and focus, walking to his death, understanding that he's a carbon sibur, and that his machshavas are going to be the make it or break it, the pigel, and what he's doing is like a part of Klal Yisrael. This is like a pristine description of Mesiras Nefesh on the highest level, which is easy to wrap your head around, saying Rabbi Chanan Vasim and Hashem Kendame, a Kadosh, right? This is very easy to understand. Rabbi Chanan's a Kadosh. Now I want to read you a tshuva from a shtickle off the beaten track tshuva sefer. It's called Aselech HaRav. It's from Rav Chaim David Halevi. I've learned a few of his tshuvas here and there. He was actually the Rav in Tel Aviv for the government, like the government Rav in Tel Aviv before Bavadi. Bavadi took him over. So he's like in the 50s and 60s, early, back in the day. And he writes as follows. He quote this tshuva Nun Aleph and Chelik Aleph. It's a fascinating tshuva. He brings a quote from the Yediot Achronot on Yud Ches Tammuz Tafshin Lamed Hey. It's a quote from the daily newspaper Yediot Achronot on Yud Ches Tammuz, which again, very soon, Tafshin Lamed Hey is 1975. And he quotes as follows. He's writing about a pair of bodies that were just exchanged. After the Yom Kippur War in 1973, Israel ended up with many Egyptian prisoners, and they were able to make a swap. And when they made a prisoner swap, they actually resolved something called the Livana affair. I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but it was one of the Mossad's biggest bungles. They tried to have people do something in Egypt, plant bombs outside American targets. It was like a whole mess, and a whole bunch of them got captured. In Israel, because they didn't want to take responsibility for it, denied that these people had anything to do with them. And this whole group of Jews in Egypt rotted in prison for like decades. But in 1975, when Israel was finally able to get them out, so they got out a few prisoners, and they also got out 2 bodies. And here's the story that he reports. He says like this. He's quoting from the newspaper. There's a whisper going on. People are talking. Nes ira. Something miraculous happened. After 30 years of being buried, like paga harikavon begufais. No decomposition took place in these bodies. People don't believe. It can't be, but people want to believe. They check, they think. There's pictures. What is it? We open these caskets to photograph them to know who we're getting. There's pictures from it. It shows them their skin on their faces is still stretched evenly across their bones, as if they're still alive. Their mustaches, the hair. Now this is a direct quote from the Yediot Achronot. Now, you would think he was talking about, they're bringing the Goyin to Eretz Yisrael, right? They're bringing the Chidas body, they're bringing up, he's talking about 2 Egyptian young men. One's Egyptian, one's Lebanese. One's name is Eliyahu Ben Suri, and the other one's name is Eliyahu Hakim. You could Google them, they both have Wikipedia pages. They're 2 Lehi terrorists who killed a British governor and his accompanying bodyguard in Cairo in 1945. Shortly after the Holocaust, they felt that the British, and they rightfully so, felt like the British were squashing Jewish immigration. They felt like the British had a big hand in many Jews who killed, and they had many assassination plots. They wanted to kill the Prime Minister. They wanted to kill a lot of people. They ended up settling on I forgot his name, Sir Lehoy, maybe. He's not a famous guy, I don't think. Lord Moyni or something was his name. And they went to Egypt. One of them was Egyptian by birth. One of them was Lebanese. They shot him and his bodyguard. They tried to escape on bikes. They were chased down by a motorcycle police officer who captured them. They had a quick military tribunal, and they were taken out to be hung. And on the gallows, while they were being hung, they sang Hatikva, which was not yet the national anthem of Israel, but this is a big contributor to becoming the national anthem of Israel. They sang Hatikva on the gallows. I think one of them, Eliyahu Ben Suri, gave a diatribe by his court case about the British and how he's not sorry, and exactly what you'd expect from a freedom fighter. And today in Israel, there's streets named after both of these people in many cities, in many big cities, Yerushalayim, Tel Aviv, Haifa. There's multiple streets named after both these people. So Rav Chaim David Halevi, is reporting on a Yediot article that's reporting on two young Jewish boys, neither of them from at all, as far as I know, terrorists, murderers, whose bodies are being brought over 30 years later, and saying that their guf stayed complete. And then he segues into a whole discussion about Kadoshim status. And he basically shows how someone who's Neragai de Malchus and someone who has din of a Kadosh, his body doesn't decompose, he's a tzaddik gomer, and he continues on. It's not a very long show, it's 3-4 pages, but that's where he goes with it. And I'm just putting this out to set the goalposts. I think you see, what do you say? No, they're buried in the ground. Yeah, they're buried in the ground. So you see just the goalposts of Kadosh attribution. You could have Kadosh attached to something that's Rabbi Chanan style, with tremendous ernstkeit and seriousness, a commitment and a dedication to Yiddishkeit b'shlei Musa, and internalizing and recognizing that what's happening to you is planting a Kadosh Baruch Hu's flag on this world and standing for that and caring about that. And you could have someone who's young, idealistic men who are killing British officers, who are being attributed the same badge of honor of Kadoshim. Now, I'm not here to decide one way or the other. I'm just using this as a vehicle to display the range that this goes. Now, I want to try to go through the sugya about how one gets the title of Kadosh and what's implied in the title of Kadoshim. I'm just using this as the goalpost, just to open up the goalpost for us. Now, the real question where it's most discussed, where it was commonly discussed, is by the Holocaust. Because the Holocaust, 6 million Jews were killed. Of them, only a small percentage were religious Jews, from Jews. Many of them were not from at all. Many of them were worse than not from. Many of them were only, half, a third, an eighth, whatever. Yeah, exactly. We're just some genetically Jewish, but barely even Jewish. It was gizanut. It was racism. It was against the race of Jews. It was a genetic line of Jews. It wasn't Jews as Jews like for the Yiddishkeit, but it was just a genetic line. And because of that, it raised the question, now, you have to understand, the question is not only are people who are not from, or people who had no idea why they were being killed, are they Kadeshim? The question is equal opportunity. Even on someone like Rabbi Chanan, you could ask the question. Yes, you in your mind are saying, I'm a carbon, I'm going as a carbon, I don't want to do pigul. But the person who's gonna kill Rabbi Chanan, what's his intentions? Why is he killing him? If he's killing him because he doesn't like black frocks, then maybe that's not, you know what I'm saying? So the question is equally, it's an equal opportunity offender. It's supposed to offend equally. It should offend equally. You could ask the question in the widest possible range, but you don't have to ask the question narrowly. And now, what's mamish I found this to be like a shtickle, it's a gut wrenching thing. I was reading an article written by Rabbi Shua Aronson. There's two Rabbi Shua Aronsons. Both of them we're going to quote in this conversation, but this is Rabbi Shua Aronson number one. One's a Meshav Lahalacha, and one was more of a Darshan. This is the Darshan version. But in the back of his sefer, he has an article on Kiddush Hashem. Isfuli Chasidai Mitzvahs Kiddush Hashem, and I want to read you something he writes, and I can't imagine the predicament the person can find himself in. He says like this: Kol Oisim Milyanim Kedoshim Shom Soa De Anatzim B'Mises Mishonos Him Misasam Mises Kiddush Hashem Him Kimu B'Moisim Esfitzas and Esgavash Mikdashti B'Zech B'Nei Yisrael Al Mekaimel Nemer Ein Kol Beri Chayil Lamed B'Chitzasan. All the people who were killed by the Nazis, were they Mekayim the mitzvah? Does this have the status of someone who was killed by Kiddush Hashem? Ha'ovdahi, he says, Ki Im Hayosh She'anatzim Lachmu B'Sina Sitness Le'Ra Keneged HaYehudim Elegam Keneged Kol Dvar Yahados B'Chemo B'Zam Arsi Harsu Bat Knesiyas Karu Bizu Sifrei Torah Sarfu V'Chilu Sifrei Kodesh V'Cholak Zeres V'Akzios Hayim Chunus Dafkel Me'Shabbos V'Cholak Del Chalam Nashbisin. Says the Nazis displayed a tremendous premeditation and care rate on the Yiddishkeit of the Yid also. They ripped the Torah, they burnt Gemaras, they did, things on Shabbos and Yom Tov on purpose. They were hyper aware of the fact that Jews are Jews, not that Jews are just a race. But the Nazis never asked you to convert. That was never even an option. They didn't give you a binary choice and say if you convert, you'll live. If you don't convert, you're going to be killed. They made a predetermined plan, a final solution to destroy anybody who's called a Jew genetically by their accounting metrics. So here in this opening, he says, like both sides, he says, "Ashaylehi him Yehudi shehuma savor hayose Yehudi, hainu mekadosh Hashem b'misasai." Is that Mekadosh Hashem b'misasai? And he says, "Mekubal me Rambam mekari b'geras hakodesh." That the Rambam holds it is, which is not true. This Mekubal me Rambam is a shvach marmakim. We'll see that the Rambam doesn't really say it, but isn't that now? What to me was striking is he says like this. This is a person who survived the ghettos, who survived the camps, who came to later on to Israel. He says as follows: "Shailas elu nikru b'meichig l'loy heref." While I was in Auschwitz and Buchenwald, what kept me up at night laying on my bunk in Auschwitz and Buchenwald was, if I die, is this even worth anything? Like, I'm here, a Jew, in Auschwitz, we're being put to death, gassed by tens of thousands a day. Is it even anything? He says, this is something that we discussed in the barracks in Auschwitz. Which now, I can't imagine how, that's horrific. Meaning, you're being put to the, and he's a frum person. He's along the Rabbi Chanan vein. You know what I'm saying? He's asked it. We asked ourselves this. Like, is this any l'chayra? Hagamaris kulon v'chein Rabbi Seinu Rishonim einam danim ala b'goy ha'onis lavar ladas. All Kiddush Hashem that's discussed in the Gemara, that's discussed in the Rishonim, is only talking about a guy who's trying to force a yid to be mechal Hashem Shemayim, to go against the Torah. Malach al yotzi lisakal al shemalti espini al sheshemarti Shabbos al shachalti matzah. All the psukim and the midrashim and chazals that talk about a Moshe Nefesh are talking about someone who had a choice to follow Hashem's Torah at the pain of death, or to not follow Hashem's Torah, and he chose to follow Hashem's Torah. He says that's not what we're doing here. Now this, to me, the framing of this question from someone who's telling you that he thought these thoughts as he lay in his barrack in Auschwitz, just makes it like, it really puts it into like its proper context. I mean, that's the question. This is the $1 million question. Now, obviously, the question always rears its head again and again, because every time there's a terrorist attack in Eretz Yisrael, I remember, obviously, the Tree of Life massacre, everyone handled this. The Nova Festival, everyone handled this. There are different times where this shadow comes around, and it tends to evoke very visceral, emotional reactions from people. We're trying to avoid that. We're trying to just talk about it clinically, literally clinically from the sugya. I'm aware that it tends to emote very strong reactions. We're doing this clinically. So now let's try to go through the sugya. Just one more sad hakdama before we go to the sugya. I always held this to be an interesting thing. Now it's nishti nishter, but if you know the nusach of Avinu Malkeinu today, I believe has 44 stanzas. I could be wrong. I think it's 44 stanzas. Now the Gemara in Tainus tells us that when Rabbi Akiva wanted to daven for rain, he said the tefillah of Avinu Malkeinu. So the Avinu Malkeinu was an ancient tefillah. It's a tefillah that was nischaber there Rabbi Akiva thousands of years ago. Now Rabbi Akiva's Avinu Malkeinu only had, and I'm speaking from the hip here, so I don't. There's real research, academic research on this. Pachas Yoser, Rabbi Akiva's Avinu Malkeinu had maybe between 12 and 15 pismainim. It's the first 12 and 15 pismainim. Over the Dairis, people added in different pismainim. For example, Menam Megefa Minachlasecha, right? Or Menam Megefa Minachlasecha was the first time there was a pandemic. The first time the Jews went through a pandemic, they inserted that into Avinu Malkeinu, for example. And because of that, the version that we have over there is only one of several alternate versions. There are many versions of the Magefa Avinu Malkeinu. This is the one that stuck for now. And when Corona was happening, there's a Bacher in Menei Bar Chaim Malin. I think he's married. He's an Enikel of Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein, a good head, who wrote a whole kuntres on this Avinu Malkeinu, all the Nischayos of Menam Magefa, whatever. Now, in any case, the last 12 to 15 stanzas of Avinu Malkeinu were added on after Tachvatat. They were added on about 400 years ago, which is relatively recent. Always interesting to find something that's you think is in the Siddur forever. What do you say?
The last one?
Which one? I think so. Yeah. All these were added. Now, if you look over there, because it's added after Tachvatat, there's not one. There's three that talk about people who are killed like Kiddush Shemayim. It says Avinu Malkeinu. What do you say? But how does it go? There's three. It says Avinu Malkeinu Aseileman Harugim al Shem Kachecha. The next one is Tfuchim al Yichudecha, and the next one is Bayi Beishamayim al Kiddush Shemecha. And then there's also Nekaim, meaning it's all the components of Ashkenazi liturgy. It post attack. Now there's three of them. So isn't it odd that there's three Avinu Malkeinu that say the exact same thing? Harugam Hashem Kachecha, Tvucham Yichidecha, Boy Mesh Mekiddush Shemecha. It's all the same thing. He's saying that Avinu Malkeinu have Rachmanas on us, and the schos of people are Moisei Nefesh Kiddush Shemayim. Like what's these three different things? So the Kloisenberger Rebbe rather said sad, very very sad, touching word. The Kloisenberger Rebbe said he remembers during the Holocaust when the Nazis would line people up. So the Nazis were organized and they would shoot in one particular direction. It was right to left or left to right or whatever it was, clockwise or counterclockwise. And he said the first people who were closest to where the gun started, they only got to say Shema Yisrael Hashem. Tell Hashem, that's Tvuchim, that's Aseilaman Harugam Hashem Kodshecha, the first Shem Shemayim. Tvuchim Al Yichudechas, people got to the next Shem Hashem, and Shema Yisrael Hashem Alekeinu. And then Aboy Beishemayim Akidah Shemecha is Hashem Echad, the ones who got to the third Hashem Hashem. That's what the Kloisenberg Rebbe used to say to answer this question, which is a sad, touching word, but certainly not Pasha Pshat. It's certainly not the Pshat and why these repetition of these three things. So I saw someone ask Rav Chaim Kanievsky this question, and Rav Chaim said something like this. Rav Chaim said it refers to three different types of death: skila, or tevach, or streifa v'chenek. It refers to the dalad misas bezdin, like the different dalad misas bezdin that a person could incur. But I saw a vart from someone else, and this always resonated with me. This vart is that this three stanzas of Avinu Malkeinu are Gufa trying to build in the various levels of Mesiras Nefesh. There's Mesiras Nefesh, which says Aseh Leman Harugam Al Shem Kodshecha, just Al Shem Kodshecha, just for the fact that they're called Yidden. Yidden, we walk around, we carry Hashem's name on us, whether we like it or not. We walk around, we're associated with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You could be fry, you could be militantly fry, you could be whatever it is. Banim Heim Lamak, Banim Atem Lashem Lekechem, Yisrael Shechata, still considered Yisrael. Banim Atem, Benkach Banim Atem. There's Kama Gemara like this. Tuchel Hashem Kachecha, just a Yid because he's a Yid. The next one is Harugam al. One second. Avinu Malkeinu. What's the first one? Harugam Hashem Kachecha. The next one is Tuchel al Yichudecha. Yichud Hashem is already a level of commitment. You're being miyachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tuchel al Yichudecha is Jews who are already a religious Jew, a from Jew, someone who lives his life the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants him. But he's also not killed dafka for religion. He's just killed because he's a Jew. But since he's more Jew and he's more Isaac in being a Jew, it has more meaning. It's a bigger Kiddush Hashem, and then the third stanza is Haboyi be'eshu b'mayim al Kiddush Shemecha. That's an active Meiser Nefesh. Someone who was faced with the most devastating choice a person could be faced with, withstood the test and was killed for his Mesiras Nefesh for the Torah. That's like I saw this word from someone. It's a Heintige guy. It always resonated with me, and I think that in the Avinu Malkeinu, the Chachamim Sheba'isei Adar after Tach V'Tat understood exactly what we're discussing over here. That there's so many shades in Mesiras Nefesh, and that there's no right answer. Since Kadoshim is kind of a social construct, and there is no exact right answer. There is no Chazal that says, Hey Chidami Kadosh. They're all Kadoshim. It's gradations in Kadoshim. There's this Kadosh, this Kadosh. Of course, there's the elite level of Kadosh, someone who's Moisei Nefesh HaKadoshim Shemaim, properly, B'Shleimus, on a mitzvah, being Moisei Nefesh. But these are all gradations in Kadoshim. Now, with that in mind, and that is my, to be honest, that is my final opinion. I do believe that Kedoshim is gradations. Now we'll go through some of the sources, and we'll see that what I just said now is not mamish borne out by the sources. And Pashtus, the Rishonim that refer to Kedoshim, are really talking about something pretty much more specific. And then we'll see some of the sources that do build out this conclusion that we're saying that there's some sort of scale over here. Now it's interesting. I read a few different long shtickl Torah about this week. Some people's agenda, clearly, from the way they started off, is to prove that not everyone's a Kaddish. I'm triggered by that presumption to start off like that. Like, some people have a need. I read a whole lot, I won't say Sefer now, but a whole Langam Aracha from the Sefer, and everything that could potentially be a diak to broadening the net of Kedoshim. It doesn't exactly say Kaddish, it says Chassid. It doesn't say Kaddish, it says Tzaddik. It does Now, I'm not mocking that because, of course, that's true. If Kedoshim is some sort of, exceptional title, then if you're not a Kaddish, you're not a Kaddish. I understand that might be true. But I'm saying there's different attitudes to this. There are people looking to be more inclusive, people looking to be more exclusive about it. Now, it's probably Miloshin Kiddush Hashem. There were some words, probably Miloshin Kiddush Hashem. Now, I'm not sure where to start. How long am I talking for? When did I start? Okay, so maybe we can continue this topic. Maybe we'll end it. This was the introduction to the topic. Tomorrow, not tomorrow. Next week we'll do. This is why it's a cliffhanger. Next week, in Hashem, we'll discuss the. No, this is 2-3. This is 2-3. Yeah. To be continued.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.